Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and today I will be getting into my afterthoughts on the grand final of Eurovision 2022. Now, as you can see on my channel, I've uploaded two parts before this where I talked about the general production of the contest and also the semi-finals, but it's not necessary to watch those before you watch this because I actually recorded these segments on different days, so maybe it does set the context a little bit, but it's again not strictly necessary. And I also split this into parts because the footage was getting too long and I didn't want it to get too boring, so you can just watch which part you want to watch. And but if you are interested, I will edit the whole thing together at the end and upload the whole thing as, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours of footage in one go. If you want to watch that, feel free, but as you can probably tell, this is absolutely not scripted, so get ready for more stutters, more random pauses, and other random kind of noise. So with that said, let's get right into my thoughts on the grand final. Now, I do have to say that this part is being recorded several days after the semifinals segments because I was out hiking and stuff, and I got sunburned. Not a good experience, but anyway, getting back to this, I just want to say that I'm pretty sure during the semifinal segments I said something about like saving some of my comments for the grand final portion. I can assure you that I've almost certainly forgotten what I was about to say in those segments. But regardless, let's get to it. Let's start with the running order. Go one by one, and then I'll talk about the split results afterwards. Right. Czech Republic. It was a really, really good show opener, I think. Some people were kind of pissed that Czech Republic had to open the show after closing the show in semifinal 2, but I think it was actually a pretty a sensible decision, I guess. I wouldn't call it surprising, that tends to be what they do anyway, whenever a country gets a pimp slot in a semi-final, they tend to get a not so pimp slot in the grand final, and I guess that's exactly what happened to the Czech Republic. But in this case, unlike the past couple of years, usually show openers tend to do all right in the final results. Like I think Lithuania opened the show like last year in Rotterdam at the grand final. And they did okay, they came top 10 and all that, but I guess we can't say the same for the Czech Republic. And this makes me sad too because I really like the song. I liked the performance a lot. And yeah, but I guess there were just so many other much more impactful acts after this that this just kind of lost out. I mean, gosh, 5 points in the televote. A little bit better in the jury, but not that much. So yeah, at the very least, they themselves said that they weren't too fussed with the result. They were just happy that they got to the grand final. I believe it was like their I think this qualification was like the 4th ever Czech qualification, which is pretty good for them, I think. So yeah, I also heard in the official Eurovision podcast that their head of delegation said to them that they weren't gonna win, which is harsh, but I guess it is true. They were never gonna win Eurovision with this song, and really, frankly, if you ask me, in ESCZ, the national selection that they used, other than maybe Judy, I don't think anyone would have been able to win Eurovision in that pack. And even then, now that we know of Ukraine's huge televote score, I don't think anyone would have won Eurovision then. But yeah, maybe Judy could have done it in a more normal scenario, or she could have gone like bottom 5 in the semi, who knows. But yeah, that's Czech Republic. I think a really, really solid performance, and I think in the actual overall scoreboard, they were definitely robbed. I also heard that this year that they decided to actually get Czech people to stage the performance rather than just pulling out the classic Sasha John Baptiste, which I guess worked out for them, at least in the semifinal. I really had hoped that they would get a higher result in the final, but I guess for a country like Czech Republic, a qualification was already good enough. So yeah, with that, let's move on to Romania, the country that was put in the death slot, and in hindsight, I think one of the most obvious candidates to put there, to be honest. They were a pretty borderline qualification. They were a jury NQ, actually, with the semifinal 2. So yeah, not really surprised they got put in second. But what I am surprised about is the fact that it wasn't, as much of a death slot as, many of us were anticipating. We were anticipating Romania potentially getting, bottom 5 or maybe even just dead last. But turns out, you can see right here, they didn't even come close to that. And instead even ended up above the likes of Belgium and Armenia and, Czech Republic. So yeah, I'm really happy for him, and again, it's a very catchy melody, very catchy chorus, so I guess that's part of what made it do so well in the televote. So yeah, really happy for him. Again, I'm just glad that he qualified, to be honest. It's been a good couple of years since Romania qualified for the final. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good result for WRS, and I think he should be proud of it. And right now, as I'm recording this, he's having the time of his life right now in Spain, and really happy for him. With that, let's move on to Portugal. I'll be honest, I'm actually positively surprised at the result, because a lot of us were worried that this wouldn't transmit very well on screen, I guess. And I guess that's kind of true for the televote. It's a song like this that comes way too early in the running order to make too much of an impact. So 36 points in the televote, that's really not terrible for this kind of song, to be honest. But what I'm really surprised about, and what I'm really happy about, to be fair, is that they got jury top 5, which is really good. Because all of us thought maybe Greece or Italy would be, or even Netherlands would be getting a higher jury vote than Portugal, but Portugal came out of nowhere and just came top 5 in the jury, which is really happy. Well, I'm very happy for that. So yeah, I think the performance was one of my favorites of the year, to be honest. I was just worried that it wouldn't transmit very well, but I guess the jury has picked up on it. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised about that. And I think this is a result that Portugal can be happy about, because I actually heard somewhere that this is actually Portugal's best non-victory result in the 2000s or something like that, or maybe even just period. But yeah, it's one of the best results that Portugal has gotten lately, and yeah, I think them winning in 2017 has really raised the standards of the songs to be found in Festival and Song. So yeah, really happy for them, really happy for Mauro. Highly suggest that you stream some of her new music. That being said, I haven't done it myself, but yeah, she's released several new songs now during the Eurovision period. So yeah, you should go check them out. Yeah, very happy for Mauro with this result, in an English majority song, no less. So yeah, really happy with this one. I wouldn't say she was robbed or anything. That seems like a pretty reasonable placement to me, if you ask me. And with that, let's move on to the next country, which is Finland. Now, Well, yeah, I can't say I'm surprised with this result. This kind of happened with Alexander Rybak in 2018. This is just what tends to happen with big names and stuff. They tend to qualify pretty comfortably. Well, if they have a good song, which was not the case with the Root in 2019. But if you have a good song or at least decent song, you'll qualify pretty comfortably. But then in the final, you just completely flop. And I guess that's kind of what happened to Finland, to the Rasmus. I can guarantee you that at least 5 out of 7 of the other acts in UMK would have ended higher than 21st place. I want to say especially Bess and Young Hearted. But yeah, I guess this is an okay result for Finland. I would say it is kind of a flop considering the quality that they have in their national final. But if they keep up the quality in the national final and decide, for once not to choose an outdated flop, then maybe we could see, Finland win Eurovision this decade. Who knows? Of course, this year that definitely didn't happen. But maybe we could see it in the future. Who knows? I can't say I'm disappointed with this result. In fact, I would have loved for them to not qualify at all. So yeah, 12 points in the jury. Not really that surprising, to be honest with you. So yeah, not much to say. Let's move on to Switzerland. Switzerland is another one of those, just like Finland, I would have rather not qualify at all. But they did, and yeah, it continues to be jury bait in the final. I was actually counting the number of rankings of individual jury members earlier for a reason you will soon find out. And there was an entire one juror who gave 12 points to this. Thank God their country didn't. But yeah, anyway, this still did surprisingly okay in the jury vote. I will say I am surprised that this did better than Poland in the jury. Everyone was saying that Poland was this jury bait, and then Switzerland ended up above them. Again, I just would have rather that this didn't qualify at all. But I don't think it's very hard to see why they got 0 points in the televote. I mean, it's a boring ass song. Coming this early in the running order, yeah, don't expect anyone to have reasonably voted for this, to be honest. So yeah, I'm not surprised that it got 0 in the televote. I wish it would have done worse in the jury vote, but yeah, it is what it is. Not much to say. I hope that Switzerland is less of a flop next year, because their 2019 to 2021 run was very solid. And let's see if they can return to that next year. I don't know, but this year not so much. Right, let's move on to France. Wow, all I can say is robbed. They were just robbed. The thing is, what's funny about this is that even though they were ranked higher in the televote than in the jury, they actually got more points from the jury than the televote, which is make of that what you will. But anyway, yeah, in hindsight, I do think the performance wasn't the best it could have been. I dare say their performance at the national final was actually better than the one they put in Turin, even though they had all those fancy patterns displayed on the arches. Yeah, it wasn't actually all that different. except one key thing. Ahez's vocals really weren't on point. They weren't harmonizing very well. And I think maybe it was just me, I'm not sure, but I definitely felt like they were singing off key. So yeah, that's a little unfortunate. So yeah, but I still think this should have ended maybe a little higher. I mean, it's France bringing something really different for their country. It's not something you normally expect from France. And I think that this should have been rewarded a little more, maybe, not bottom 5, come on. But it is what it is. Again, it's happened, we can't really do anything about it, and let's hope that with this, France isn't necessarily discouraged from sending more Breton songs or songs in, non-French languages, let's say. But yeah, I still really like the studio cut. I still play it a lot. So yeah, I wish this could have done better. I think this was absolutely robbed. Not as robbed as some may have thought of it. I wouldn't say it was worthy of top 5 or maybe even top 10. But I don't think this deserved bottom 5. Just for the uniqueness factor, I think this should have ended up at least a little higher than what it actually got. But I think all the way back in like July or August last year, I somehow predicted that France would flop, and I guess I was proven right. I don't know how I had the foresight for that, but I did. Anyway, with that, let's move on to another song, which is Norway. With this one, I think it's kind of mixed feelings, because on one hand, I'm ultra relieved that this wasn't the televote magnet that everyone on Twitter was calling it. I think this is the kind of song that's you either really hate or really love. And I think my stance on it by now. I'm not gonna talk about it. If you follow me on Twitter, you know my stance on the song. But I will say I am a little surprised that it didn't do higher in the televote. But I suppose the first half was very televote magnet heavy, I guess, in that sense. So yeah, this didn't do that well, which I'm relieved about. This flopped in the jury, which I'm very happy about as well. And yeah, unfortunately, they still snuck into the top 10, which, dare I say, should have been taken by the Netherlands instead. But, I guess Norway took it, and there's nothing we can do about it now, so yeah. I guess in, some would speculate whether this would have done better than Death of Us by LC Bay. It's harder to answer that, I think, than some people would think, because, yes, this is a year full of a lot of ballads, but at the same time, this running order really does not benefit Subwoofer. It benefited the running order benefited them in semifinal 1, and even there they didn't even come close to winning the televote. So I can't really imagine what would happen with LC Bay, actually. With LC Bay, I don't know what I was saying there. I don't know what would happen with LC Bay, but I don't think she would have done too much worse than Subwoofer. Maybe a little lower than in the televote for sure, but accordingly also higher in the jury. So yeah, no one really knows for sure. Anyway, Subwoofer got a top 10 result. If you know me, that will be, unfortunately, they got a top 10 result. But so I'm glad that they didn't do that well in the televote, as was previously speculated. It's an upbeat song, but it's outclassed by the likes of Moldova and Ukraine. So I guess in that sense, there's a reason, it didn't do that well, and also it is, pretty divisive. Come on, let's just be honest with that one. So yeah, I don't have much else to say about Norway, or at least that I can think of right now. So let's move on to Armenia. Right, with Armenia, I think the real challenge for them was qualifying, and I don't think they particularly anticipated a very good result with this to start with. So yeah, I think that's not an amazing result for them, obviously, but the fact that they got back into the final after years of being of NQ after NQ, I think is achievement enough on its own. And yeah, the running order didn't really benefit it either in that regard. I will say I'm surprised it still got that high, to be honest, in the televote, 20-something points. Yeah, that's not amazing, but for a song being sandwiched between Norway and Italy, I think that's alright, That's not amazing, obviously, but again, I think their main goal really was just to qualify, and that was essentially it. And well, they've done just that, and they also managed to avoid bottom 5, so good on them for that. So yeah, not much to say. So yeah, let's move on to Italy. Yeah, I will say this was, for Italian standards at least, kind of a flop. I think part of it is them actually intentionally trying to make themselves flop, because they realized how hard it is to host Eurovision properly. So they just tell some other broadcaster just take the wheel, and also. If you remember in the live performance, oh man, this bit where Mahmoud was singing in the beginning, and then Blanco just kind of crept up on him as if he was like a serial killer or something. Yeah, no, that was hilarious, and people started to make memes out of it. And yeah, it was at that moment that maybe they hadn't exactly nailed down their staging as such. Which we're very glad for, because God knows we want a double from Italy. So yeah, I think for what it's worth, they did okay. I will say that I thought the televote would take more kindly to Italy than they eventually did. I thought Italy would end up above Norway and maybe even the UK. But I guess being this early, and also being before Spain, and also that creepy motion from from Blanco, I guess all of that just kind of culminated in a, for Italian standards, pretty disappointing televote, and also the jury vote was alright, but I think they could have went for more if they wanted to go for more, but pretty clearly they didn't. I think they intentionally put Spain after them to just distract the audience off of them, so they could get less points and not do as well, in the thing. So yeah, with that, let's move on to the country that was put behind Italy to distract off of them. Spain. I had originally thought that maybe they would put Spain 12 or 13, 12 or 13 for something like that. But I guess they didn't. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but going after a ballad certainly helped Chanel stand out a lot more, as opposed to going after maybe some other upbeat song. Yeah, the cheering in the audience was huge. Yeah, so I don't really have much to say. Chanel put on an amazing performance that was appreciated almost equally in the jury as it was in the televote. They got third in the jury, they got third in the televote, and as a result, they got third overall. I think it makes sense, unlike some Spaniards on Twitter. Yeah, I think it was a really, really powerful performance from Spain, and I think that if the Spanish delegation put this much effort into their performances every single year going forward, then I think we could have Spain actually win Eurovision one of these years, maybe even in this decade, or maybe even just in the next few years. So yeah, really, really solid performance from Spain. One of the best of the night, I think. So yeah, nothing much else to say. I think it was a really solid performance. Definitely deserved such a high televote and such a high jury vote as well. And I think it was this combination that led me to think that perhaps they could have won Eurovision. And in some other simulations maybe they could have, but well, it is what it is. So yeah, they still got a really good result. I'll talk about results in more detail later, but yeah, really solid performance, really solid results. With that, let's move on to the Netherlands. And with the Netherlands, if I'm being honest here, I think the performance could have improved a little bit. It was a little monotonous, and I'm pretty I think color-wise, they could have done a lot better. They could have made it look a little more interesting. But I suppose being sandwiched between Spain and Ukraine, they were never gonna do extremely well. But I would say S10 held her own, I guess, in this really strong wave, I guess you could call it. But yeah, I think maybe she could have done a little better in the jury. Televote, I was never gonna like this a lot, let's be honest. So yeah, I'm not really disappointed with this result per se, other than maybe I would have wanted them instead of Norway in the top 10. But other than that, yeah, she put on a pretty solid performance. Her vocals were all right. The lighting was okay given the circumstances. Again, given the circumstances that they were going after Spain and before Ukraine, I think this is a pretty solid result for them. And I think, I hope that their result this year encourages them and also other countries to send more entries in their native languages, which would be really cool. Yeah, with that, I don't really have much to say about this other than that. Yeah, a very solid performance from S10. And with that, let's move on to our eventual winner, which is Ukraine, of course. How do I put this? Well, we knew that this was gonna eat up the televote, to be honest. I was just wondering by how much of a margin. Let's talk about the performance first before we get to the actual scoreboard. For what it's worth, I think this was certainly improved from the Vidbeer performance. I think that was a little messy. That was a little kind of unorganized, but they really cleaned it up for Turin. They really made it much more impactful, much more rehearsed, much more orchestrated. So yeah, it feels a lot more intentional now in that sense. A lot more, cool graphics, if you will, which I'm surprised they were able to pull off given their circumstances. But I applaud them for that, absolutely. Yeah, very powerful performance, though I still wouldn't say it was the best of the night. Especially since the archers were right there, which blocked up a good amount of the back LED screen. I think that how to put it? Yeah, I think the performance again was just a lot more clean, a lot more rehearsed, and that's certainly nice. And but I do think the song in itself drags on a little too much near the end, with the part without any singing or rapping. I think that drags on a little too much near the end. But other than that, I think it was a very, very solid performance. And in in the absence of a war, I think this would have still done a pretty solid top 5 finish, maybe. No, yeah, definitely top 5 actually. But of course, with what's going on right now, of course, this propelled them to new heights, let's say. And from that, let's come down to the next country in the running order, which is Germany. Well, I can say that I'm not surprised that this came last place. We were not surprised about that. This was a demonstrably weaker song than a lot of the other songs on offer this year. And to be fair, there weren't a lot of good options in the national final anyway, other than maybe Felicia Lou's, what was it called? Anxiety, something like that. That was okay, but I do think maybe it could have lost a little bit of its impact in Turin if it had won, which of course it didn't. But yeah, there weren't a lot of good choices in that national final, if you ask me. And I suppose they kind of did the best they could with this song. There weren't a lot of very good or innovative ways to necessarily stage this. So I think their approach of that kind of what do you call it, one take music video or live music video, something like that. That approach I think worked all right for this. Did it deserve 0 in the jury? Maybe not. But I knew that this wouldn't get 0 in the televote because it's not as controversial as, say, I Don't Feel Hate from last year. Yeah, there were gonna be people who like this kind of performance anyway, so I knew that this wasn't necessarily gonna get 0, at least in the televote, and maybe it could have gotten some points in the jury in some other circumstance. But I guess going after Ukraine just kind of severely killed its chances, I guess, of getting anything other than bottom 5. So I'm not really sure what Germany can do from here, but I think that they definitely have to kind of rethink their selection approach, if you want to call it that, or maybe just go back to internal. That worked great for the United Kingdom, so maybe they should just go internal. Maybe they should just scrap the national final. Who knows? Because Germany has a lot of good musical talent, yet year after year they are one of the consistently poor performing Eurovision countries, and it just is really perplexing given the amount of talent that gather in Germany musically. So yeah, I'm not really sure what they can do. Again, maybe they should just go internal. But yeah, I guess that's another year of Germany getting 25th place. They got 25th place last year, and they got 25th place this year. So consistency, I guess. With that, let's move on to Lithuania, which as you can tell by my rising tone there, I am very surprised about, because everyone was saying that this would be a jury qualifier, but no, it was the televote that took them across the board, across the line. And even in the final, they did significantly better with the televote than with the jury. So, I'm really surprised about that. But I suppose being, it could have been later, I guess. But I guess being here, right, maybe after Germany, it kind of piqued some people's attention, and also potentially the Lithuanian diaspora were hard at work. Who knows? But yeah, I think I'm really surprised that this got the result that it did. I thought that this was gonna end like bottom 5 or something like that, but it didn't even come close. In fact, it came top 15, which I'm really happy about, especially for a song in the Lithuanian language, no less, because last time they did was actually before the 21st century, and well, they didn't do so well there, as we'll be looking at in the later segments. But yeah, really happy for Monica Liu. Despite all the technical issues that she had with the arches, she still delivered a quality performance, and yeah, I'm glad for her results and for Lithuania, and maybe hint hint they can possibly win Eurovision in the next few years. Who knows? I'll talk more about that in my national finals video. But yeah, for now, let's move on to Azerbaijan. Well, to be honest, I'm surprised they got any televote points at all. It's another one of those really boring songs that no one actually pays attention to. And I think some shady stuff certainly happened with some of the jurors. I mean, I looked at the jury of Spain actually, and I found out that for some reason 4 out of 5 of them had placed Azerbaijan first place. So you can't say nothing fishy was going on there. Come on. Especially for a jury from Spain. So yeah, I think some fishy stuff definitely went on behind the scenes, maybe even with Greece as well actually. So yeah, sometimes some countries get 12 points to Azerbaijan, quote unquote, out of nowhere. And I think some stuff definitely happened behind the scenes, let's say, and whether we agree with it or not, it's happened now. Again, I'm surprised they got any points in the televote, but I guess they did. Maybe some people just were particularly into this kind of stuff. I don't know. So yeah, not really much to say about Azerbaijan. I can't say that the performance was good because I think it was very boring, and when Nadir was singing that high note, he looked like he was Tom from Tom and Jerry. So yeah, I can't really find anything necessarily positive to say about this one. This was another one of those which I would have rather just not qualify at all. Maybe let something else qualify. Hint, hint, Ireland, hint, hint. So yeah, with that, let's move on to another country from semifinal 2 that I would have liked to not qualify, which is Belgium. And yeah, this still perplexes me. How the hell did this qualify? And how the hell is it still getting jury points in the final? Like, it's such a boring song, such a boring performance. Like, okay, maybe the song isn't that bad, but the performance really wasn't it. It was so boring, so flat. I have no idea why some jurors really took to this. Like, 59 points? Really? Yeah, I'm absolutely not surprised this got 5 points in a televote. It was in a long run of songs that just weren't that interesting, to be honest with you. So yeah, this absolutely did not stand out in this lineup. And I'm not surprised this got a single digit televote, but again, I'm just surprised how did this still get points from the jury. Yeah, it's not a very interesting performance if you ask me. So yeah, not much to say about that. Yeah, let's move on to Greece. Greece was speculated to be this potential jury winner, but it couldn't even end up above freaking Portugal. I'm sorry, I had to laugh to this because I'm on Twitter a lot, obviously, and one of the most vocal groups of people against Cornelia were the Greeks. The Greeks were some of the most, I guess, outspoken about their dislike of Sweden's entry this year, and on the other hand, they'd like to pretty much big up everything about their own entry, which ironically was not written by a Greek. It was yes, Amanda is half Greek by ancestry, but this was pretty much a fully Nordic production. Like, other than staging, this is a pretty much fully Nordic production. Amanda produced this with another Norwegian producer. Maybe it was touched up a little by the Dream Team, but other than that, it was a pretty Greek-free production, if you want to call it that. So I'm not sure why the Greeks are bigging it up as if it was their own, because it's not their own. Anyway, they got a decent jury score, which I think we all expected, but I think we all certainly expected more, maybe, because this sounds so much like your traditional jury bait power ballad, right? But I guess it just didn't. It just didn't bait them as much as some Greeks maybe were hoping for. And in the televote they did okay. I'm not surprised they didn't do that well. I mean, again, it's a ballad, and televotes tend to shy away from ballads a little bit unless they're really good. So yeah, not surprised about this result, this split. I will say I am surprised that they ended up below Moldova, and we'll get back to Moldova, but I think this is a pretty good result for Greece, but for how much they had been hyping this up, I think you could classify this actually as an underperformer, in contrast to Stefania from last year, which you could say overperformed, because people were saying maybe this would get like 10 to 15 or maybe even 10 to 20, but it got top 10. And in contrast, this year, people were thinking Amanda could pull top 5, or some were even delusional enough to think she could win. And then she didn't do any of that, and she only got 8th place, which is still really good for recent Greece standards. But I guess it was a little bit of an underperforming performance, I guess. I don't know what else to say. She sang pretty well, but I think the song itself was always like missing something to truly make an impact. So with that, let's move on to Iceland. See, Iceland was one of those that I didn't mind their qualification, but as soon as they qualified, I knew they were not going to do well in the final. And I guess that's exactly what happened. And Sister also said in the Eurovision podcast that their biggest challenge indeed was just to qualify, because, and I quote, "It's more fun to watch the grand final when your country is in it." So they qualified. Good for them. And for a country that's usually not done super well in terms of qualification, I guess this is a good one for them. Some people were speculating before the songs were released that maybe that maybe Iceland could be a first-time winner, maybe this year, maybe in the next couple of years. Maybe that still could come true. But I guess this year just wasn't it. The fact that they qualified at all was surprising, if you ask me. What I find interesting is that they actually got the exact same number of points in the jury and the televote. 10 points from each, and in total they get 20 points. So that's pretty interesting. I think the performance was alright. It was nothing special really, and this was pretty much doomed to going before Moldova, but I think for what it's worth they put on a pretty solid performance. And with that, let's move on to the most unexpected televote magnet of the year, which is Moldova. I don't know what to say about this. To be fair, I kind of predicted that this would qualify. I'm not necessarily surprised about that, because it is a fun song, but I guess I just totally underestimated its impact. It's a fun song, it's catchy with the whole hey ho let's go thing, but I guess I underestimated its impact because, to be fair, it is going after a long run of rather low key songs, starting from Germany all the way to Iceland, and then Moldova is just kind of like a slap in the face to wake you up, and it sure gets you going. Um, it makes you happy for sure, but I've said this before. I'm still a little sad that Sweden had to go after them, because I think that really harmed Sweden's chances in the televote. Let's get to Sweden later, but for now, I think, for what it's worth, I think Zopshis do put on a pretty solid performance. They didn't have a train on stage, obviously, not in any way, not even in graphics or anything, but it was still a really engaging, really fun performance that everyone could just have a bop to, I guess. So yeah, not really much to say, but I will say I am really, really, really surprised that this got second place in the televote. Like, how does that even happen? It's such an it's such a silly song, for the lack of a better descriptor. I enjoy it for what it is, but I don't think it should have gone second in the freaking televote. Maybe that should have gone to Spain or Serbia. But anyways, it happened. I guess we can't really do anything about it. And I guess this continues the streak of Moldova doing surprisingly well in the televote, and then coming in a shock top 10 position, just like in 2017. So with that, let's move on to Sweden. Now, if you ask me, I think there was a pretty concerted effort by the Italians to sabotage her any way possible, and I guess it kind of succeeded. For God's sake, she didn't even get top 3. Where I start with this, I think the most glaring mistake I already pointed out in the previous slide, which was when she was doing the grand final performance. They didn't even leave the disc or the green circle in the right position. They left it actually slightly slanted for the entire thing, pretty much, and that kind of ruined the experience for me. Though, to be fair, I think maybe most people who watched it on the night maybe would not have known what it was supposed to look like. So it did ruin the experience a little bit for me. And I think there was some moments in there that I kind of came to the realization that maybe Sweden is not going to win Eurovision 2022. In hindsight, maybe I should have made that realization a lot earlier, but I still think that Cornelia, for what it's worth, she put on a really, really, really solid performance. One that she can definitely be proud of. Of course, she did the classic Melfest winner high note in both the jury final and the grand final. That was always, not always. We were expecting it to happen, but it's always appreciated that it did happen. I think, to be fair, it is always difficult to just transplant a Melfest performance straight onto the Turin stage, and I think I also appreciate the pyro or the fireworks that they added onto the performance kind of last minute. I think it works pretty well. Maybe in the stadium it doesn't look as good because it's not as close to look at. I don't know how to really describe it, to be honest. But I think on TV it came across pretty well, and especially the last shot I think was really cool. It was when the circle went from red back to green, and then she stood in front of it as just kind of a shadow right at the end. And then, that was really cool, I think, as a shot. Though I do suspect maybe these little adjustments to the performance made it a little less raw, a little more rehearsed, and I think perhaps that could have harmed its chances a little bit in the televote. I'm not sure. Maybe that was the case. Maybe not. But I still think it was the best performance of the night. I'm totally not biased, as you can see. But yeah, I think it was a very solid performance. I don't have much else to say. I hope Cornelia goes for Melfest again and maybe wins Melfest again, and yada yada. Let's see what happens. But for now, let's move on to Australia, which I don't really have much to say about. It's classic jury bait, so I'm not surprised it's got top 10 in the jury vote. I'm also not surprised it's got an exact 2 points in the televote. I looked at a voting breakdown and I discovered that the 2 points all entirely came from Azerbaijan. So I'm not sure what the people of Azerbaijan were on. No offense to Sheldon Riley, of course, but not surprised about their result. They got top 15, which is certainly better than their result last year. Not exactly their like golden days kind of result. When they were getting like second or like at least top 10. It's not that, but I guess he still put on a pretty solid performance. Going after Sweden, that it was kind of hard to follow, to be honest. So yeah, I guess he did okay. Not much to say. Let's move on to the UK. Right, I gotta admit that the performance was pretty good. Right. Do I think it's jury winning material? No. But I do think it was very solid. A really, really good effort from the UK. I will say though that I'm not sure what the keyboard player and the guitar player were for in the performance. That you can still like vaguely see them on the side, just kind of standing there looking really tiny next to the nest structure thingy. I'm really not sure what that's for, because the main focus indeed is on Sam Ryder, so I am a little confused about why they were still there. Did they serve their purpose? Not really. I think if you ask me, they could have just gone without these two musicians. I guess it could have just been Sam on stage on his own with the nest structure thing, and I think that would have worked out a little cleaner. But I guess since the players were so practically invisible, that it didn't really matter in the first place. But yeah, it's still, if you ask me, I don't know why this won the jury. And maybe it should have gotten a good result in the jury for sure. Sam has very, very competent vocals. But was this a jury winner? I don't think so, really. If you ask me, I think it was maybe. I think the jury should have been won by either Sweden or Spain, if you ask me. But maybe and then have the UK like third or something like that in the jury. But yeah, I guess this happened now. I wouldn't really complain about it because it was a very competent performance. The guitar solo, I don't really know how to think about it. I like the like in the studio cut. There's the nothing but spaceman part. I really liked that. This is certainly different from that, but I don't think it's necessarily worse. But I wouldn't say it's better either. I guess it's alright. Yeah, but no, still really. Beyond that, it was still a really, really competent performance. I think the camera angles could have been cleaned up a little more. But other than that, yeah, really, really solid efforts from the UK this year. And I think their second place was very well deserved. And with that, let's move on to Poland. Another country that some people thought could win the jury, but, well, for team place, I don't think that's winning the jury. And only 9th in the televote, which ironically is higher than the jury vote. But anyway, yeah, I think this was just kind of a flop if you ask me. Good vocals, but that's it. That's it. I can't really say anything else about it. The song means nothing. The dancers contribute nothing to the performance. The Windows Movie Maker effects, if nothing else, make it worse. Yeah, I'm not surprised they got this result. If you ask me, it might even be too high. Maybe this should have gone below Azerbaijan or Australia or something like that, if you ask me. But yeah, some people were thinking this could still get top 10, but well, that certainly didn't happen. It's still a pretty solid performance for Poland, I think, for a country that usually doesn't even qualify. So yeah, good for them on that front. But yeah, this was, I guess, for all intents and purposes, kind of a flop. And if you ask me, I'm not really surprised about that. Right, moving on to Serbia. I don't really know what to say, because this is a really really divisive song and performance. Because I was counting the number of jurors that gave certain songs maximum points and last place, and there were like 20 something jurors putting this last place, but there were also like 10 or 12 jurors putting this first place. So clearly it's a very divisive entry. So yeah, not really surprised that it got 11th in the jury. That's an okay score if you ask me. Maybe it was a little bit of a flop, but for what it's worth, I think that was alright. And this was always going to do well in the televote, because first off, this is the pimp slot. Famously, Måneskin performed at 24th last year, and of course they won. So this year it comes as no surprise that a televote magnet like Serbia would perform there and do very well in the televote. I will say I am surprised this didn't do better than Moldova, but I think you already know my opinion on Moldova. I think it's a little overrated in the televote. So yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised still that this didn't do better than Moldova. But yeah, still a very solid performance for Serbia. Yeah, not really much else to say. I will say I'm still not convinced. The performance, I don't think, was still very what do you call it? It still didn't transmit enough to me. I feel. I've seen so many Serbians online explaining the meaning of the song, and if I'm just looking at it by itself, I don't think I would have gotten any of that, to be honest. So I'm, in hindsight, I'm not surprised so many jurors put this last place, because it doesn't transmit very well, if you ask me. So I think most people voted for it because of its catchiness, which is absolutely valid. But yeah, I can see why it didn't do so well in the jury. But still, it gave Serbia a really good result. So can't complain about that, right? And with that, let's move on to the last country of the night, which is Estonia. Again, I think that had they been put earlier, I think they probably would have done worse. But closing the show on a note like this was very solid for them, I think. Yeah, so they got a pretty good result in the overall vote, I guess. It could have been better, because but unfortunately, there was the arches and stuff, so the performance was ruined a little bit. But I think they still did okay. Maybe it could have done better in the jury, but there wasn't really a whole lot on the stage to begin with. It was just him, his guitar, and the mic stand. So yeah, for what it's worth, I think he did the best he could, and he got a decent result for Estonia. It's certainly better than their non-qualification last year. And Ironically, someone pointed out that Viste, who represented Estonia last year, had actually said on an earlier Estilao, which was the Estonian national final, that they should vote for him because he's the real Estonian. Which is ironic because Stefan is also born and raised in Estonia and speaks Estonian. So he said that in the presence of Stefan and Victor Krohn, and eventually Victor Krohn, Viste, and Stefan all went to Eurovision, and Uku was the only one to not qualify. So can you call that karma? Who knows? Anyway, yeah. So that's all the songs. In terms of the general results, I think that I think part of it is fair. There's certainly some in there that I would change around. Maybe move Czech Republic and France up a little. Move Poland down a little, Norway down a little. But yeah, other than that, I think this ranking actually isn't terrible. Yeah, of course I would move Sweden up as well. But yeah, it's not actually a terrible ranking. Contrary to what some people are saying, I think it's fine actually. I'm very happy that Italy didn't make top 5. Maybe I would move Greece above Moldova. But yeah, other than that, I think this ranking isn't actually terrible. And what do I think about Ukraine winning? Well, I think my issue with it, yes, I have an issue with it, so if you don't like that, maybe just click off. I think my issue with it isn't so much that they won, but the fact that they won with such a margin. Maybe if it was a close race between Ukraine and, I don't know, Spain or the UK, and then Ukraine just barely won out by maybe like 30 points or so, a la Måneskin Bravo Pravi, I would have been fine with that. That would have been totally reasonable to me. But this is an obscene margin. Like, Ukraine won over the UK by almost 200 points. That's like actually insane. They got such a huge televote that at this point, I think, at that point we knew kind of that there wasn't any point in announcing the televote scores of Spain, the UK, and Sweden because, Ukraine had won it. So, what's the point? Yeah, I think I'm just a little disappointed in that regard, I guess. And also, with a lot of recent Eurovision winning songs, I think I could actually make the case for it to stand on its own merits as a winning song, like even some more controversial ones like Amar Pilish Deutsch or 1944, or even Heroes, or hell, even Toy, which I really hate. These are songs I can still kind of make a case for them to have won Eurovision on their own merits, but in this case, I don't think I can do that. We always say that Eurovision is political, but I think in this case, again, I said this in my rant thread that I posted a while back, but a little bit of geopolitics is kind of what makes Eurovision interesting. This whole Armenia and Azerbaijan constantly blanking each other, Greece and Cyprus giving each other 12 points, that kind of stuff. That's what makes Eurovision interesting, right? But with such a huge televote score, it's kind of clear that I think Daffy Freyer said a few days ago on Twitter that Kalush won Eurovision because they had the best song. I think I would profoundly disagree with that. I think most people voting didn't vote based on the best song, to be honest. I think there certainly are people who really take to this kind of ethnic hip-hop music, And in terms of genre, I think this victory is great for that. It's very historical. This is the first rap song to have ever won Eurovision. But I think again, I can't explain away this victory based on just the merits of the song and the performance alone, without the influence of external factors. Because like even with 1944, right, it's different with 1944 because it wasn't talking about something that was directly happening. Like it was talking about the 1944 deportation of Crimean Tatars, and it is certainly relatable to the 2014 Russian annexation of Crimea, but it's not directly related because if it was, then Ukraine would have won Eurovision 2014, but clearly they didn't. And 1944 won in 2016, so I guess in that sense I think I was able to make more of a case for a song even as controversial as this to have won Eurovision in that year. But I think with Stefania, my I don't know if it's an issue necessarily, but to me it doesn't sound like a Eurovision winning song, if that makes sense. It sounds like something that would do really well in the televote, then get tanked in the jury, and then you get something decent like Schum did last year, maybe a 4th place or something like that. I think if we were not in this scenario that we find ourselves in, then I think that probably is what would have happened. I think either the UK or Spain would have won, and then the other country plus Sweden would have rounded off the top 3, and then Ukraine with Stefania would have gone 4th or 5th or something like that. I think in a war-free scenario, that would have been what happened. Let's not even talk about Alina Pash. Oh my god. I think that would have been what happened in a war-free scenario. But of course, we live in the here and now, so we can't, necessarily disconnect these things, right? So, I don't know really what to say. Am I denying their victory? No, absolutely not. It's happened now. I've come to terms with it. Ukraine are the winner of Eurovision 2022, and fair enough, they got the most points, so they won, sure. But I think my gripe with it, I guess, is really kind of how much they won Eurovision by. That I think is more my issue with this. My issue is not them winning again. My issue, I think, is just that so many people voted for Ukraine because Ukraine, and not because it was necessarily the best performance of the night, which I don't think it was. Again, I think it was probably one between Sweden and Spain. So I don't know how to really think about this. Again, I'm not trying to insult them or anything. Again, this happened. I've come to terms with it. Fine, they've won Eurovision. That's okay. I don't know. There's a bitter taste in my mouth. Because it just, simply put, it just doesn't sound like a Eurovision winning song. But perhaps this could open the door for more diverse Eurovision winners in the future. Who knows what's going to happen in that regard. But with that, I think that's a pretty solid review of the grand final. So those are my thoughts on the grand final of Eurovision 2022. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed my commentary. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part of this series. Though if you did miss this next part, I wouldn't blame you, because I'm going to be talking about the statistics of the contest this year. Again, you can check out the previous parts where I talked about the semifinals and the production. And I'll see you next time.